ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Update. We've got some breaking news for you tonight out of Doswell, Virginia, because as you may have noticed, it is Tuesday, and that means we've got another teaser from King's Dominion. Teaser Tuesday from good old KD. Now, Danny, this one seems we're moving into the summing up portion of our teaser campaign, it seems. And this one clearly says, do you see a pattern? And what it looks like to me is that, in the Matrix style of text and letters, every old word with the double T in the letter with the one upside down T, the one right side up T, every one of those is listed here somewhere that you can clearly see things like rattle, and other ones as well, and Naughty's there.
They're all in there. Yeah.
They're all in there. They've also added some other major things like 816, Candy Apple 2018, Candy Apple Grove. So where are we at here with this campaign? It seems like we're coming down to the wire. We don't know if this is going to be the last one. We don't know if they're going to give us another one next Tuesday because they will be announcing on Wednesday, and we'll have full coverage for you. We will have our good old representative, Daniel Westfall, co-owner of COASTER-net, will be in attendance at King's Dominion and attending the live reveal. So we'll have all the latest for you then. But is this the last teaser we're going to get, you think?
I don't think so. I have to think that this is planned out. I have to think that they'll give us one last little, or maybe one last big nugget to kind of whet our appetites for about 24 hours before we get the announcement next week. I would have to think, because this one doesn't seem like a conclusion. This one is, do you see a pattern? Like it's asking a question. I think next week we're kind of get one that's a bit more clear as to the pattern that they want us to look for, even though we think we kind of know what the pattern is here. And I don't know even at this point if the King's Dominion ones are starting to hint at the other parks. I think at this point they're just kind of using these to fill time because they've teased so much, and King's Dominion has really kind of done more than anyone else. Cedar Point has done a fair bit of stuff, but at least recently in the last 2 months, I think King's Dominion has really put the most stuff out there. Which is funny because that's the park we're seeing probably the biggest lack of progress. We really have only seen track put on the lift hill since I went to King's Dominion in April, and really nothing else has happened in the last 4 months. So, Cedar Point, we've seen tons of progress. Great America, we've seen a lot of teasers. Knott's Berry Farm, we've seen some rides come out. This King's Dominion is definitely the one we've seen the least progress out of in terms of what we know they're actually doing. So I think that's interesting. So I do think we'll get a teaser next week. Obviously, this one, we're kind of in the dark on this one because we don't know what we're going to get in terms of layout and elements. We have an idea because we think it'll be somewhat similar to what Storm Chaser is. In terms of some of the elements that it might perform, we might get a rollover drop similar to what Storm Chaser and Medusa Steel Coaster has. I think the biggest thing at this point, the biggest question mark I think at this point for the King's Dominion coaster is going to be what's the name. And there's a bunch of different theories out there, and I don't really like any of them, to be completely honest with you.
Well, we've heard a number of things. We mentioned last week the concept of rotten apple. Which I'm not completely opposed to. I don't think it's an outstanding name. I think it's an interesting choice for a name. I know you don't like it. We know that Candy Apple Grove has been renaming themes to renaming rides to old names. So we know that Bad Apple has returned. Some of the other rides that used to be in the area were Apple Turnover, which was an old Enterprise ride, and then also Adam's Apple, which looks to be like a Music Express. Now, Danny, what about the thought of, going back to the three better than none? Will we be getting 3 rides next year? And maybe they'll bring back those old flat rides. We saw at Carowinds this year, them install a whole flat ride package about 4, they had a Top Scan, they had a Music Express, they had a Troika. Could we be getting Hurler and maybe a new style, or maybe an Enterprise, a refurbished one from somewhere, maybe even a new style one from Zamperla, a Discovery? Now, the only reason I shy away from Zamperla is Cedar Fair hasn't really worked with them recently, but maybe they found an old Hoos version somewhere over in Europe, and maybe they found another Music Express, that they found one for Carowinds. Maybe they want to install another one. So maybe that's where the 3 plays into this, and we're going to be see a returning to, Apple turnover. Adam's Apple comes back, and then Hurler gets a new Apple theme name like Rotten Apple, or maybe something completely different. That's one concept. Another concept I have is maybe those old terms will be used as elements on new Hurler, where if there's an inversion, they could call it the Apple turnover, or if there's a big drop, or there won't be a big drop.
I like that idea. I do like that idea.
And they'll call that the Adam's Apple drop. Those things could definitely work too, I think, by trying to spice up some of this and adding these old terms into the new Candy Apple Grove. That's all I got, though, to be honest with you, Danny. Do you like any of that?
I like the fact that we might use some of those terms for elements. I do like that idea. But nobody's really come up with a name for the ride that I think would make sense, that I really like. Especially if they're going to keep this as part of Candy Apple Grove, because it does seem that they're playing the Candy Apple Grove card heavily here, which is why it suggests that there might be something more to it on that end.
The other thing is some people were speculating that the Knott's Boomerang would even come to King's Dominion. I think there's room for it. They took out Shockwave. They only put in, Delirium. I think there's plenty of room for it. I just don't see how that would be a good idea to put 2 coasters in like that in the same year, especially a Boomerang that pretty much I think everyone in the region has ridden by this point. I know, because what's the nearest Boomerang? Carowinds, the nearest Boomerang, maybe?
Carowinds has one. Six Flags America had the inverted Boomerang at one point. Hershey Park has one. There's none in the immediate area.
I think something like that would be much better served at either a different park altogether, or something like Michigan's Adventure that doesn't have a whole lot to begin
Michigan's
with.
Adventure is the obvious place you would go if you were going to relocate a Boomerang, because you can finally get them a new roller coaster. And
Dorney already has an inverted one, so
and you don't and you don't have to spend really any money except for the cost to move it and construct it, which is really next to nothing. You already have the ride. So Michigan's Adventure is the obvious place that a relocated ride would go to, I think, at this point. I don't know. This is an interesting one, because I think, as we said last week, I think we're really, really starting to get to the point where they're very vague and they may not mean quite as much. When we had the numbers before, we had the 20 better than there were things that we could allot that to. So it was 20 better than 4. That could mean it's going to have 20 bank turns compared to the original 4. That's kind of the easy answer if you're just talking about Hurler. And then we had the 28 makes it better, and it was a picture of feet, so we're talking maybe about the height change. Then 3 better than none. Maybe there's 3 inversions, whereas old Hurler had none. These aren't the type of teasers now that we've seen the last month or so where we can actually put figures and statistics to it. So it doesn't really help us in terms of what the ride is doing, which is why a few weeks ago we said that's kind of leading us into maybe the name or the theme. And I think we're even getting vaguer than that now, to the point where they're kind of done teasing the ride and the name, and now they're just teasing us, because they've given us all that they're going to give us. And they're just kind of like poking fun at us like, hey, did you figure it out yet? Did you figure it out yet? I honestly think that's what's going on at this point.
Well, we'll keep you updated. Next week is the big week. Sitting here in 7 and 8 days from now.
Cold, Andy. I'm coming down with a cold, Andy. I think by next Wednesday, I think I'm going to be hacking up a lung.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a lot of work to do next week. So we'll leave you here this evening with this latest teaser. If you have any ideas, let us know what you think it might be. And as always, I'm Andy Robarchek from Chicago, Illinois.
And Denny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
And as always, right on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, guys.